We're Article Group 4, and we will be reviewing the article Why Strategy Execution Unravels and What to Do About It. Some folks you'll hear from today, we have Josie Bush, Barton Crum, Bailey Hill, Clay Jesse, and then myself, Leslie McKeever. Strategy execution is essential for business success. There was a recent study that showed many of the different beliefs supporting why companies aren't executing to their strategies. One of the findings is that there are about 5 myths that are actually incorrect. So there's these companies out there that believe the reason that they're failing, or some of the myths listed below: execution equals alignment, execution means sticking to the plan, communication equals understanding, a performance culture drives execution, and execution should be driven from the top. All of these are myths, and this article targets these 5 myths behind that poor execution and gives companies the knowledge that they need to pivot in order to start seeing success in their strategy execution.
The background of this article is that there is lots of research on ways to form a strategy, but there's very little to basically no research on how to actually execute those strategies that we put into place. This article surveyed 7,600 managers in 262 companies across 30 different industries, for lots of research on what's working, what's not working, and how to better execute to get these results that we want. The articles use this research to address 5 myths as to why the execution of the strategies companies are forming end up not working. The execution is just not there. This article is important because it takes an in-depth look at where the managers and the companies are going wrong when it comes to executing a strategy. Knowing what doesn't work, we can ensure that we don't just keep making the same mistakes over and over again and expecting different results to come from it, just beating your head against a wall. It allows for companies and managers to find new ways to try and make sure the goals of the company are understood and ensure the execution of the business strategies that they did put into place. And knowing what doesn't work is an important step in the right direction to find something that actually will work. This article gives us a lot of information and useful insights into things that the managers might have been doing that they thought were working or have worked in the past, but it's just simply not getting it done anymore. We think it's very important to know what not to do, and this article gives us lots of information in that area. A good strategy is only useful if you can put it into action, and this article can help find better and more reliable ways to achieve a goal of execution.
We're now going to discuss the specific findings of this article. So for myth 1, it was execution equals alignment. However, it's not typically alignment that is the problem for these organizations. Instead, it's that they're struggling from a lack of being able to depend on their colleagues in other functional areas. While many of those surveyed said that they were able to always depend on their direct reports and their bosses, only 9% of those interviewed can rely on their counterparts in other areas all of the time. This lack of communication between areas leads to poorly handled conflicts about 2/3 of the time. So, organizations really need to focus on increasing communication and collaboration across the different divisions. The next myth addressed was that execution means sticking to the plan. However, instead, managers and employees actually need to be able to quickly adapt to new plans. They need to be able to face unforeseen challenges and take advantage of fleeting opportunities. While organizations are typically just trying to stick to that plan they spent plenty of time creating during the strategic initiative writing process, this is keeping them from being able to allocate new resources and people, and keeping them from leaving declining businesses or initiatives quickly. Another myth discussed was that communication equals understanding. However, only 55% of those who were surveyed could name one of their company's top 5 priorities. Yet, 90% of them reported that they hear it often enough, that their top leaders communicate their strategy enough. So it is not that they aren't hearing or seeing the strategy, it's that they're not understanding it. So it needs to be told in ways that aid understanding, and it needs to be told in ways where they're able to actually get into the conversation and use those strategies to really understand how they can be a part of the success. The fourth myth addressed was that performance culture drives execution. While it is always important to have a high-performing culture, there's a lot of other aspects that actually lead to this high performance. So organizations need to acknowledge personnel attributes such as agility, teamwork, ambition, motivation. When you really focus only on performance metrics, we diminish innovation and creativity, and we encourage managers to take very conservative commitments that they know they're actually going to be able to meet. So instead, organizations should focus on rewarding both high performance and coordination and collaboration across units. The last myth addressed was that execution should be driven from the top. However, when we do this, when we concentrate the power at the top, we reduce the capacity for lower-level employees to execute appropriate decision-making skills, initiatives, and to take ownership of their own results. So instead, top levels should guide and support the strategic initiative, while middle managers and technical experts should actually execute them. They are the ones who actually have their boots on the ground and they're able to make the initiative actually happen. Okay, so all in all, the takeaway from the specific findings was that organizations should implement cross-functional collaboration, stress the importance of adaptability, increase understanding of the strategy at lower levels, reward employees for successfully implementing personnel objectives, and allow lower levels to take ownership of the strategic ideas and processes.
So far, we have discussed the purpose of this article, the background, as well as specific findings in this article. Next, I'm going to cover implications for managers that are found in this article and address all 5 myths and those implications that the article suggests. The first myth is execution equals alignment, and while many times employees in corporations can count on their bosses, they can't always count on their coworkers, and this is a problem and is seen as an issue within organizations because there are many silos, people working across different portions of the organization. And communication needs to be strengthened across these silos per the article. This is one of the big implications or suggestions that the article had for managers, was to cultivate and encourage that communication across the different portions of the organizations, and this will help better the execution and the strategic plans that the company has for its overall goals. Next, myth 2 is education means sticking to the plan. This is a big red flag because execution cannot follow the plan, strictly. And this is because of how much change takes place. If you stick to the plan exactly how it's laid out when it was first initiated, opportunities are missed very often times. And so this article encourages managers to be more agile throughout the plan and creative. There's an emphasis on creativity here as well. They feel that being agile, adaptable, as well as creative throughout the plan process, it actually helps execution more than just sticking to the original plans word for word and not looking for new opportunities that could better the execution. Myth 3, communication equals understanding. Lots of times bosses, managers, they will tally how many emails are sent out about the strategic plan. They will brag about how many times it's been communicated and who can say that execution plan, but really what needs to be measured is how much employees truly understand what top-down management is communicating to them, as well as being sure to keep their message consistent. when they change this message and they alter it, it's where it becomes even more stressful to lower level employees who are just trying to stick to one plan, and then it gets changed on them, so confusion sets in. So keeping that message consistent and making sure employees truly understand what's being communicated to them are those implications for myth 3. Myth 4, a performance culture drives execution. Yes, a performance culture will drive the execution. However, again, it kind of relates back to myth 2, where the ability to be creative, take risks, see new opportunities, be agile, be adaptable to all these changes that are always taking place. A performance culture definitely stifles that. And when you're stifling that creativity, that ability to take a risk, even if you're going to fail, your organization doesn't thrive, it doesn't see new opportunities, and it ultimately would be surpassed by someone else who is allowing their culture to be creative and take those risks. Myth 5, the last myth, is execution should be driven from the top. This at one time was an older model that did work. It was all from the CEO and then to the VPs, senior VPs, etc. So from the top all the way to the bottom, and if you were the low man on the totem pole, you didn't get any say. But this article implies to managers and suggests to managers that they should empower their employees, make sure that they are being seen, they're being heard, they're being praised for their creative ideas. They're pointing out new directions. Let's pay attention to those, because if it's being all driven from the top, you're only getting one perspective, but it's everyone within the organization that sees the day-to-day and can make good decisions and suggest directions to go based on what they are seeing as well. Those are the 5 myths and their implications for managers.
All in all, we believe that this article provides excellent insight into a minimally explored concept in the business world. Most of us have either personally seen or studied an example where strategy execution, rather than the strategy itself, was the direct cause for failure. However, most of us have done a lot more research on strategy development than we have on execution, and that's alluded to at the beginning of this article. Of the 5 myths presented, we strongly agree with 3 of them, thinking that they are very relevant to all aspects of business and provided great insight, and then we think that 2 of the myths could have been improved upon, leaving the reader to want more. So the first myth that we really enjoyed was myth 2, and that was that execution means sticking to the plan. We think that in today's fast-paced business world driven by globalization, it's more important than ever for businesses to be fast and agile and able to react to the market. If the senior leaders are making a plan and making sure that it's followed rigidly to a T, that's really going to bog down the organization. So breaking down that old school bureaucratic way of thinking and making your business more flexible, we think is a great idea, and this myth really explained that very well. We also strongly agree with myth 3, and that is that communication equals understanding. Now, this is important not only in the business world, but really just in all aspects of day-to-day life. Communication is just very important. You want to make sure that, 1, your communication is very thorough, and that whoever you're communicating with is understanding what you're saying, and that's especially important when you have your senior leaders in the business, giving the intent and the vision and the goals to the other leaders within your organization. And then you also want to make sure that you're explaining that why, so those other mid-level managers can take what you're saying, they believe in it, and then they're able to go and execute it. And then we also strongly agree with myth 5, which is that execution should be driven from the top. So this relates back to myth 2. If you just have one single or just a couple senior leaders that are really driving home this one point that really bogs down your organization, it decreases your flexibility. And while it can be successful for short periods of time, as the article talks about, it's usually not going to be successful over the course of time, because things are going to change and your organization's not going to be able to change with it. So there's 2 myths that we think could have been improved. The first is myth 1, and That myth discusses the execution equals alignment. This was talked about quite a bit throughout the article, which was that other business units aren't aligned with each other, and that's something that organizations see as a huge problem. We certainly agree with this, but we think that there's a lot of differences depending on what types of business units you're talking about, and the article doesn't really distinguish. So the difference between business units within the value chain, so maybe your sales up to your marketing to your manufacturing, the implications of those business units not getting along is a lot different than if you had lateral manufacturing plants that were all making different components of the same product. And that would also be different than if you had kind of a supporting function unit, such as human resources, that maybe doesn't get along with finance, the finance section within a business. While that's not good, these all have different implications on your strategy execution, and the article really didn't talk any about that. And then we also think that myth 4 could have been improved. So this talks about the performance culture drives execution. And while we very much agree that performance should not be the only metric that senior leaders are using to judge their business and to promote people, we think that it's just hard to use other metrics to judge, and that's why a lot of businesses don't use them. So this article provided a few, such as agility, teamwork, and ambition being good metrics to use. We think a lot of organizations understand that, but they have a hard time measuring that, and that's why they aren't used. So this article neither expressed how difficult this was or provided any solutions to this, and we just think that that left the reader wanting more when it came to this myth 4. But overall, we enjoyed the article. We think that it was very much value added, and hope you enjoyed our presentation. Thank you.